Okay, so now we're going to cut the countersink for this forearm bolt, and first I use the center finder, raise the stock up into the center finder and then adjust it left and right and in and out until you run a fingernail over it and there's no separation there. Here, let me just show you after already having done that. It comes off. Can you see that, how that just slips off in here this way? See how it's not lining up now? So now I got to put it back. It's pretty amazing. The human body is capable of amazing perfection. And I think it's because we are built from that most perfect entity. We're a reflection of perfection in nature. We are part of that. Polishing telescope mirrors is done by hand and eye to an accuracy of 1/10 of a wavelength of light. It's just amazing. Okay, so now we're going to drop this down. We're not going to touch X and Y knobs. And drop this out of there. And I've got a 7/16 inch Forstner bit, and that's kind of an odd animal. Up in there. Now this is going to make a nice hole for an Allen head. I'm not going to try to use the original factory screw. That would just it'd take a lot of time drilling, testing if it's long enough, measuring. I'm just going to cut this to clear the head of an Allen, and I'll cut Allen to fit the length that we need. I can always change my mind later and cut it deeper and cut it bigger. That's the other thing. The factory screw has a really large diameter head, and I'm not really a fan of using a washer underneath this bolt. The washer is not a whole lot more bearing surface than this. It is hardwood. I can create a hard spot with epoxy if I'm really worried about it, but I'm not. This is a very light cocking, light recoiling gun. These things don't need to be cranked down. So I did come up with a washer of the right size, but this would mean needing to use a 1/2 inch diameter hole, and then what you see visually is this little head of a bolt inside of a big hole. It's not aesthetically pleasing, and I'm not sure a washer is really indicated in this case, but I'm always willing to change my mind, and I have the 3/8 Forstner out here just in case I do. Alrighty. So I already checked that the head of this bolt is about equal to, if I cut it just to the edge of that chamfer, it ought to be pretty close. I like to leave the, well, let me show you, the handle of the vise so that gravity helps pull it tighter, and maybe keep a finger on it while things are vibrating, just to make sure nothing comes loose. While I was talking, just let me make sure I did tighten this. No, I didn't. Which surprisingly wouldn't have mattered. It doesn't take much force to do this cut. I many times forgot to tighten it and get through the job, and it's like, oh, that came off easy. It's fine. I'm going to go just a little bit deeper so I have some sanding room. I can always cut it deeper later. Just one more little spot. It's the curve here, now that we're getting a bolt in there, the curve here is a little uneven. So I'll be adjusting that, and that means a little bit of material lost. I think we'll call that good. Looks good to me. Okay, what's next? I kind of put a little chamfer on the end here. I don't know if I'm going to like that. I can always cut it off and go back to being square. I could finish tapering this even more. I'm just going to leave it like that and see how it looks as I start getting to a better level of sanding on the wood. Maybe wait till I get some oil on it and see how it looks. But wow, this is really coming together now. But I can see that we got a lot of work ahead of us. Lots of sanding. I'll check back in with you in a while. I want to get out of my run in a little bit. It is 1:30 in the afternoon already, but after finishing those other tasks, I got the trigger guard opening largely done. I feel a little rough spot there, right there, and got the countersunk drilled for that bolt. And I can't wait to get some oil on this, so I just set about doing a 120 quick sand down, and I'll put some oil on it so it can be curing while I'm out there taking care of my body. You know, a trick for using a sanding block is take a sheet of paper, sandpaper, and stick it in there, the whole sheet, stick it in there, and then just cut it off with the scissors right next to this. It's a lot faster than trying to fold it in thirds or use a straight edge and measuring tool, or I don't know how you would do it, but I go through so much paper. Stick the whole sheet on there and cut it off with the scissors. This is 120. This is a good material, Norton Pro Sand. Don't skimp on cheap sandpaper. It's just not worth it. It's just part of the cost of finishing a gun stock, and I should calculate how much paper I go through, but between the belt sanding paper and regular paper, I've kind of figured in the past that it could be like $50 worth of sandpaper to do a stock. It might be a little generous, but I kind of doubt it. The good stuff's not cheap. Anyway, I'm just going to find straight lines to use this on. And get the round edge up into some of these curves. This box that I'm sanding on top of with this perforated mat is intended to be a downflow box. I highly doubt my little shop vac has enough flow to make any meaningful difference. I do want to someday get a regular dust management system, but at the level of this business is for me, I am not going to be able to afford it. I need to raise my prices and be doing 2 gun stocks a week, and then maybe I could make a living and afford tools. But right now, just make a mess. But it's a nice cushy surface to work on. This is looking nice. As you go along, you're going to start noticing things. Seems like that almost ought to go back on the belt sander for a moment. Just got a little edge there. Let's see how this does. Put some elbow grease into it. Look at this color. Starting to show through. This is that little strip of yellow we were talking about earlier. It wraps around the back of the pistol grip. How cool is that? Oh, and I forgot when I was on the drum sander, I got to finish cutting this back. That's a little bit of impediment there for the finger. This needs to be curved quite a ways back. Yeah, I'm going to go over there and take care of that. I'm going to put the top of the comb on the belt sander for a minute. I'm going to do a little bit more sanding. I'll turn this on when I'm sloppy with oil. The camera, that is. Oh boy, first coat of oil. Use a Minwax antique oil finish. And these first applications we're going to do it thick and heavy with a brush. We just want to get it deep into the wood, and this first coat is going to largely be sanded off anyway. It's going to give us a way to see the work we need to do sanding, because the low spots will stay dark while the high spots will get sanded off. And as we go along through this process, it's also going to let us see sanding scratches that need to be dealt with. It's going to help the light reflecting off the wood so that we can better see shape and line imperfections that we need to work on. We're going to try to be careful not to get oil dripping down the face of the recoil pad. If you do, it's no big deal. Mineral spirits will wash it off, but if you're careful, you save yourself that extra step. Sucking it up like a sponge. Oh yeah, so now I can majorly see sanding scratches, which I expect to see, but could not see before putting oil on it. Now when you're flipping it over, you want to make sure you don't have an oily finger touching the end of the recoil pad. Now later stages of oiling I will not use a brush. Brush leaves hairs behind, all of that can be managed. It just puts it on way too goopy. You'll see. But initially, we want goopy. Oops. I want to knock my cup over. We'll stand this up and get in those inletted areas a little better. Yeah, at this stage the wood's like a sponge. All those capillary holes that transferred water while it was a living tree, are now largely dried out in hollow little tubes, and the oil just sucks right up into them, which is what we want. Now this initial coat of oil, the wood's going to look a lot darker than it will when it's done because we have such significant sanding scratches all over the place. Once we get the wood to a more polished level, the color and figure of the wood will pop more and more as we go along. But this very first coat of oil, it's not going to look great, but it is going to be a chance for us to see a hint of where we're headed. This is Scott Blue shop paper towels. They are relatively lint-free. They tend not to shed like cheap white paper towels do. Although at this stage it hardly matters, since it's all going to be sanded off anyway. I'm wiping off the excess to save me having to sand all that gooey stuff off in a half-cured state later, or wait many days in the sun for it to completely dry. So I don't want it left on sitting on top of the wood. I want it in the wood. Well, it's hard to see much. Oops, let me see if I'm showing you. It's just a hint of what it's going to look like. But it is going to look great. It's a nice piece of wood. The grain goes right through the pistol grip. It's really strong. It's going to be a nice fit. Okay,